Officer Hadley barely glanced at the man behind the wheel. Calm, composed, not a hint of fear. He claimed the vehicle had swerved, ordered the driver to exit, and called for backup, this time with a K9. Moments later, he declared the dog had detected substances. When the driver questioned that claim, the leash went loose, and the dog lunged. What Hadley didn't know was that Marcus had spent years training dogs like his for missions, airports, and federal teams. What happened next left real scars on the pavement and set off a chain of consequences Hadley never imagined. Before we continue, tell us where in the world you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story might just change how you see everything. It was late August in Mississippi, the kind of evening where the sky turns gold, then purple, then disappears altogether. Trees crowded over Highway 61 like silent witnesses. The hum of insects buzzed softly in the background, while the scent of pine, warm asphalt, and summer heat hung thick in the air. Marcus Dean was headed north. The window cracked, one arm resting inside. His fingers tapped the rhythm of a song playing low from the dash. There was no hurry in him. The truck moved smoothly, the sun's last rays casting shifting shadows across the hood. His Tacoma was lived in, clean but clearly used. Dog crates in the back, fur in the seats, floor mats curling from time and travel. Inside, it was peaceful, earned peace. Traffic was light. Most folks were home by now, and the night crowd hadn't begun to stir. The road ahead stretched wide and empty. He adjusted the volume down slightly, not because anything changed, but because something in the air felt different. That was the thing about dusk. It made everything feel a little thinner, like the world was holding its breath. Then he saw them, headlights behind him, a patrol cruiser, steady in the mirror, no lights, no siren, just there. Close enough to be noticed, far enough to keep its distance, not passing, not leaving, just pacing. Marcus knew the feeling. It settled in his gut like a quiet alert. He didn't flinch, didn't speed up or slow down, didn't touch his phone, just stayed centered, flicked his signal on, passed the tall water exit, and kept going. Then came the flash, red and blue lights splashing across the trees and inside his cab. The siren let out one sharp burst, no drama, just a signal. He pulled over calmly, rolled to a stop on the gravel shoulder, engine off, window all the way down, license and registration out, placed clearly on the dashboard, hands on the wheel, still, ready. The cruiser stayed behind him, lights spinning. Then the door opened, and the officer stepped out. He walked with the confidence of someone used to being in charge. Built solid, maybe late 40s, a face shaped by years of command and assumption. No hello, no explanation. Just a lean toward the open window and a flat, pointed question. "You know why I pulled you over?" Marcus met his eyes. "No, officer," he said, steady, respectful. "You were swerving, back there, over the line." Marcus didn't break expression. "I've stayed in my lane since this stretch started. The road's been clear, no weather, no turns." "I call it like I see it," the officer replied, raising an eyebrow. "You saying I'm wrong?" "I'm saying I didn't swerve," Marcus answered. The officer gave a tight grin. "That how they teach you to talk? Keep it up, see where that goes." Marcus stayed composed. "I answered your question. If there's something else, I'm here." "Oh, you're here all right," the officer said, stepping back. And that's when it all turned. "Got yourself cleaned up. Driving like you know what you're doing," the officer muttered, eyeing Marcus with thinly veiled disdain. "But I know exactly what I'm looking at." Marcus didn't respond, not because he didn't have words, but because he knew none of them would matter here. "You been drinking tonight?" the officer asked, tilting his head with fake curiosity. He leaned closer, inhaling like he was trying to sniff out an excuse. "Little something to take the edge off? Whiskey? Maybe something stronger?" "No," Marcus said evenly, calm and controlled, the kind of calm built over years of being forced to keep it. I haven't had anything. The officer stayed close, his shadow stretching across the inside of the truck. His eyes scanned Marcus's face, searching for a blink, a flinch, anything he could twist into suspicion. "That's so," the officer said slowly, with disbelief soaked into every syllable. "'Cause I smell something, and I've been doing this long enough to know when someone's playing it smooth to cover what they're really on." "What you're smelling," Marcus replied, voice steady, "is dog. I've been working with them all day. That's what's in the air, not alcohol." "You sure it's not covering something up?" the officer said, now tapping his flashlight rhythmically on the door frame like the sound might unlock a truth. "Got anything in the glove box? Weed? Pills? Something tucked away for later?" "There's nothing illegal in this vehicle," Marcus said, still not raising his voice, still not giving in to the pressure. "I haven't used anything. I'm not hiding anything." "You always this confident when you get pulled over?" the officer snapped, his lip curling. "You always play the victim? You're giving me attitude for someone who claims he's clean." "I've done everything you asked," Marcus said, voice low but clear. "If there's an attitude here, it might not be coming from me." The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It was charged, humming like the moment before a storm. The officer straightened just a bit and let out a short, bitter laugh. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he said, a sharp edge now in his tone. "Got that educated voice, all quiet like you're better than this, better than me." "I don't think anything about you," Marcus said, watching him, not out of fear, but with calculation. "Yeah, you do," the officer snapped. "People like you always do." Marcus didn't answer, because it wasn't a question. It wasn't about traffic or safety or truth. It was about control, pushing, pressuring, trying to crack something. "Step out of the vehicle," the officer ordered, his tone stripped of pretense now, sharp and hard. Marcus paused, not in hesitation, but to make sure his hands were still visible on the wheel before he answered. "What's your probable cause for a search?" "You're sweating. You smell like chemicals and animals. You've got a cage in the back. Your pupils are off." "It's 84 degrees, Marcus replied. "The cage is for transporting dogs. My eyes looked the same when you first walked up." "Oh, we're doing this?" the officer muttered and stepped away, circling the truck. "You think this is my first time being lied to?" "I haven't lied," Marcus replied, still seated, still calm, watching the man's movements carefully, but without turning his head. "You keep telling yourself that," the officer said over his shoulder. He stopped at the back of the truck, shone his flashlight into the bed, then kept walking. Each step crunched against the gravel, slower, heavier now. The performance was over. Something colder had taken its place. When he returned to the driver's side, he didn't say anything to Marcus. He spoke into the radio clipped to his shoulder. "Unit 23 requesting backup. Solo male, non-compliant. Evidence of concealment. Requesting K9. The reply came without hesitation. "Copy that. K9 en route. ETA 3 minutes. There was no room for discussion. The officer turned and smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile you give someone you trust. It was the kind that says, "Now you'll see." Minutes later, a second cruiser rolled in, lights flashing, angling behind the first. The second officer, younger and leaner, stepped out silently and took position, just watching. Then came the black SUV. K9 unit in bold letters across the back. It rolled to a stop. Out stepped a man built like a brick wall, beard trimmed sharp, holding a leash that stretched down to a coiled shadow of muscle and fur, a German shepherd scanning the scene with laser focus. Sergeant Mercer didn't say a word to Marcus, but the next moment would speak louder than anything yet. Sergeant Mercer didn't so much as glance at Marcus. Instead, he exchanged a look with Officer Hadley, just one nod. That was all it took. "The dog's doing a sniff," Hadley said, his voice casual, as if the outcome was already written. If he alerts, we proceed. I don't consent to a search, Marcus replied, stepping out of the vehicle slowly, deliberately. No defiance, no fear, just presence, quiet, grounded, unshaken. I've told you the truth. There are no illegal substances in that truck. I haven't used anything. You don't need to, Hadley said, gesturing toward Mercer and the dog. He'll do the talking. Mercer moved with smooth precision, guiding the German shepherd around the truck's perimeter. The dog sniffed low, tracing the front bumper, door seams, and wheel wells. Ears up, tail loose, nothing locked in. Marcus didn't watch the dog. He watched the handler, the grip on the leash, the slight tension of his wrist, the quiet click of his tongue when they passed the driver's side. Then it happened. The dog barked once, then again, sharper. Mercer gave a subtle tug, barely noticeable, but Marcus saw it. He's alerting, Mercer announced, tone flat, like reading a line. Marcus stayed still. That's not a real alert, he said evenly. That was a response to you, not a scent. No physical cue from the dog, no tail freeze, no shift in focus. You triggered that. Excuse me, Mercer said, feigning offense. Hadley stepped in, his posture suddenly stiffer, voice edged. What are you suggesting? I'm saying the alert wasn't spontaneous, Marcus replied. That's not how trained detection works. Hadley's tone rose. So now you're the expert? You accusing a certified handler of false alerting? I'm stating facts, Marcus answered calmly. There's nothing in that vehicle. And that wasn't an independent indication. You really want to keep pushing it? Hadley snapped, now inches from him. I've got no problem bringing you in and letting you explain your tone downtown. I haven't raised my voice. I haven't resisted, Marcus said, voice steady. I've complied with every instruction. Hadley's expression darkened. His mask slipped. You think that calm talk makes you bulletproof? You think standing there like some well-spoken... I think you're upset because I won't shrink, Marcus interrupted. Not louder, just firmer. That did it. Hadley turned to Mercer. Send the dog in. Wait, Marcus said quickly. There's nothing to find. He's already alerting, Mercer said, snapping the leash. That's enough. No, it's not, Marcus said. That wasn't a real alert, and you know it. You don't tell me what I know, Hadley barked back, stepping closer, his breath heavy in the air. Then Mercer gave the command, quiet, sharp, in German. The dog's entire body transformed. Muscles tensed, tail lifted, and in one explosive motion, it launched forward. Marcus didn't flinch, but the moment shattered. The dog hit his leg with brutal force, teeth clamping through fabric and flesh. The impact knocked him off his feet, sending him crashing to the gravel with a crack that echoed through the shoulder of the road. The pain wasn't sharp, it was full, heavy, all-consuming. Blood soaked through his jeans, spreading fast. Still, Marcus didn't scream. Not because it didn't hurt, but because he refused to give them that victory. The dog pulled again, dragging him inches, tearing deeper. Marcus clawed at the dirt, nails scraping against broken glass and stone, anchoring himself to reality. Call him off! A woman's voice shouted from nearby, furious, alarmed. Get the dog off him! Hadley didn't move. Mercer stood silently, arms crossed. I'm recording this! The woman yelled again. Carrara Vasquez, Channel 9, I'm filming everything! A horn blared. Another vehicle stopped. More shouts, more cameras. Flashing lights bounced off windshields. But still, no one moved. The dog barked again, jaws still locked, its muzzle stained red. Finally, Hadley muttered, That's enough. Mercer issued a command, sharp and short. The dog released. Marcus collapsed, gasping. Blood pooled beneath him, the world spinning in red and white pulses of squad lights. His leg throbbed in sync with his heartbeat, each beat a reminder of how quickly calm can turn. and how far some will go just to make someone break. The pain was trying to tear him open from the inside, but his mind stayed sharp. His eyes stayed on Mercer, who looked down not with remorse, not even with hesitation, but with the cold confidence of someone convinced nothing could touch him. Even through the agony, Marcus understood exactly what had just happened. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a moment of lost control. It was control, used with intent. The beeping came softly at first, far off, like a warning tone in someone else's house. But slowly, it dragged him back to harsh light, muted color, and sterile air. The ceiling above him was dull beige, painted in a color that hadn't been chosen, only accepted. The light overhead was fluorescent, sharp where it shouldn't be, dim where it mattered. He blinked, once, then again. Skin pulled rough across dry eyes, and he realized just how long he'd been unconscious. His leg throbbed, not in a burst, but in waves. Beneath the blanket, he could feel the compression of layered bandages, tight and clean. Whoever dressed the wound had done it with skill, the kind that comes from too much experience piecing people back together. His mouth was dry, metallic, gauze, blood, something else he couldn't name. Every motion sent a ripple through his body, not sharp, but deep, like pain that had settled into the bones. A monitor beeped behind the wall. Voices murmured beyond the door. Carts rolled over tile. Somewhere an elevator opened and closed. He wasn't alone, but he wasn't being helped either. He was being watched. He turned his head, slowly. Muscles resisted. Memory flashed like a strike behind his eyes. Not pain, something darker. A courtyard, a dog barking. Not here, not now. A different place. A different war. The wrong uniform. The wrong language. A handler yelling. Gunfire. A friend falling. He closed his eyes hard. When he opened them again, the beige ceiling was still there. This wasn't Iraq. This was a hospital. But it didn't feel real. Not until someone confirmed it, out loud. Then the door opened. A man stepped in, tall, broad-shouldered, early 40s, skin the color of red clay, wore a suit that had seen some years, but not out of neglect, out of principle. He moved with discipline, with weight, like someone who used to move differently, used to carry weapons instead of case files. J.J. Washington, an old friend, former Marine, now an attorney. He didn't say anything at first, just pulled the chair closer and sat, hands folded, calm, controlled. Marcus turned his head, slowly, met his eyes. "You saw." "Everyone did," JJ replied, voice steady. News caught it from every angle. Kara Vasquez was first. She filmed the whole thing on her phone. Her station ran it before midnight. It's everywhere. Marcus nodded. Barely. Even that seemed to take effort. "They still trying to spin it?" JJ gave a short exhale. Not quite a laugh. "Hadley saying you acted unstable. Mercer claims the dog's alert was textbook. The department's saying it was unfortunate, but within protocol." "The usual," Marcus muttered, eyes closed again. Not from pain, but from knowing. "Kara's not letting it go," JJ said. "She's already reached out. She wants to talk. And she's not just covering the story. She's personally angry." Marcus didn't respond. His mind wasn't on the news or even the wound. He was thinking about the timing of the leash, the handler's rhythm, the fake cue, the absence of a real alert, the mechanics of manipulation. JJ watched him carefully. "You're not mad," he said. "Not yet," Marcus answered. "But you will be." Marcus didn't deny it. He was running the whole sequence through his head like a military briefing. From the first flash of red and blue to the second bark. Legal grounds, traffic stop justification, handler behavior, K-9 response protocols. Everything was off. "Are they filing charges?" he asked. "Not now, but they're talking about obstruction, non-compliance, passive resistance." Marcus repeated the words, like they tasted foreign. Passive resistance. That's the play, JJ said. It's what they fall back on when video doesn't lie, but they still want to explain the force. Marcus nodded. How long? 15 hours. You were under for surgery right away. Full tear through the quad. Dog went deep. They said with rehab, you'll walk again without a limp. But it'll take time. Marcus swallowed. And the shepherd? They took him back to the unit, JJ said quietly. Still active. Something shifted behind Marcus's eyes. Not rage, not even sadness. Just a different kind of clarity. Cold, clean. Get me the footage, he said, voice flat. I already have it, JJ replied. And Kara Vasquez has more. Good, Marcus said, because this isn't just lies. This is strategy. JJ gave him a look. You ready to take this public? Not yet. JJ nodded, rising from the chair. Then let me know when. Because if we don't move soon, the city's going to bury this. Marcus looked down at his bandaged leg. The pain was still there, but dull now, buried under layers of gauze and adrenaline. Yet he could feel it. Not the tearing, not even the blood, just the grip, the pressure, the way the bite held, waiting for a cue that never came. It hadn't been chaos. It had been precise. It hadn't been a loss of control. It had been a weapon. JJ returned later that night carrying a tablet and a thick folder. He dropped the contents onto the tray beside Marcus's bed and sat back down without a word. You said you wanted to see everything, JJ said. Here it is, Kara's video, clean audio, wide angle. You can see the dog, Mercer, Hadley, everything. Marcus didn't touch the tablet. He just stared at the IV line, watching the saline drip into his arm, as if wondering whether it could flush out what had already settled too deep. Play it, he said at last. JJ tapped the screen. The video began. Traffic sounds, gravel crunching, the bark, then the voices. Hadley smug, Mercer calm, too calm. But Marcus wasn't listening to them. He was listening for the bark, watching for the posture, the tail, the motion of the hind leg, just a second too slow, that limp, that old imbalance. He remembered it, 7 years ago, a young German shepherd at Lackland Air Force Base, brilliant, high drive, unpredictable, one mistake away from being cut from the program. Marcus had worked with that dog for 6 months, calming him, training him, writing his behavioral profile. They'd called him Django. Stop, Marcus said. JJ froze the frame. What is it? Marcus reached slowly for the tablet, tapped it back 10 seconds, then paused it again. The dog was mid-leap, legs extended, muzzle open, tail stiff, scar visible on the rear flank. I know that dog, he said. JJ leaned in. From where? From command, Marcus replied. I trained him. You mean recently? No, Marcus said. Years ago, during my final year with the program. He had issues, muscle imbalance, aggression under pressure, but never toward people. Not without a direct order. He looked at the screen. That scar? I remember when he got it. JJ sat back, absorbing the weight of what that meant. You think Mercer knew? I think Mercer made sure of it. Silence. Then Marcus reached for the documents JJ had brought, skimmed through names, titles, until one stopped him. Sergeant Curtis Mercer, former K-9 handler reassigned twice in 5 years. Internal complaints. Excessive force suspended from federal training in San Antonio for deviation from protocol reinstated locally 2 years later. Clean record. No explanation. Marcus stared at the paper like it had been waiting for him. I remember him now, he said quietly. Not the name, but the face. He was in the second wave of handler applicants, washed out before certification, too aggressive, didn't read the dogs, forced outcomes. We flagged him. He never should have been allowed near a unit again. JJ stood, pacing once, then stopping. Then how's a guy like that running K9 ops for a city agency? They don't check, Marcus said, or they don't care. Or, JJ added, they prefer it that way. If the goal isn't restraint, it's control. Marcus nodded slowly, eyes locked on the paused image of Django frozen mid-attack. He got reassigned after retirement. No oversight, no tracking. And with the wrong training, you can break a good dog in 6 weeks. JJ let the silence stretch again before speaking. You get what this means, right? He said finally. This wasn't just excessive force. He used your own training. He turned your dog into a weapon against you. He didn't use my methods, Marcus said at last, eyes still locked on the frozen frame. He used the silhouette of them, just enough structure to look official, but none of the discipline, none of the respect. JJ leaned in. So, what's the next step? Marcus didn't miss a beat. I want his training logs, full record. If he retrained Django, it'll be there. I need to know what he changed and how far this goes. You think this wasn't the first time? I think he's done it before, and Django isn't the only dog he's bent. JJ was already pulling out his phone. I'll start digging. We'll have to go around official channels, but if those files exist, I'll find them. He stepped out of the room, already dialing. Marcus leaned back into the hospital pillow, staring up once again at that blank, indifferent ceiling. The pain in his leg pulsed steadily, but it was no longer at the center of his thoughts. What Mercer had done wasn't just abuse of power, it was a betrayal of the training, of the trust, of a dog who had once responded only to purpose and had now been taught to strike without question. The paperwork was fast, less than 30 minutes to sign his release. But stepping outside, that took more strength. The air hit him like heat from a furnace, dense, loud, alive. The sun pressed down like it was watching, waiting to see if he'd still stand. He did. His right leg was tightly wrapped. His steps were stiff, one arm on a cane he never asked for. JJ walked beside him, scrolling through a flood of messages, alerts, headlines, people asking questions. But Marcus didn't hear any of it. His world had narrowed, focused. At the curb, Carrara Vasquez waited, gray shirt, jeans, no camera in sight. Her press badge clipped to her pocket. Her arms were folded, not defensively, but like someone holding back a flood. I didn't want to push, she said when he approached. Figured you'd reach out when you were ready. I'm ready now, Marcus answered. She glanced at JJ, who gave a short nod. He's good, he said, but nothing off script. Understood, she replied instantly. They drove to a small cafe off the highway, quiet, familiar. No one staring when Marcus walked in. That was all he needed. In the back corner, they sat. No small talk, no warming up. I know the dog, Marcus said. The one Mercer used. His name's Django. I trained him 7 years ago, at Lackland. I know his movements, his reflexes, even the scar on his left flank. Carrara froze. You trained the dog that attacked you? Yes. She didn't speak right away. When she did, her voice was low. And Mercer? He was in the program, a trainee. He never finished. Got flagged for ignoring protocol, forcing dogs to respond, faking alerts. He was removed. JJ slid a folder across the table, 2 pages. One showed Django's original placement file. The other, Mercer's federal removal order. Carrara read fast, journalist fast, but careful. I've already verified Django's reassignment, JJ said. He was retired and entered a donation program. There's a paper trail, incomplete, but strong enough to point to the local department taking him in. Marcus leaned forward, voice steady. What Mercer did wasn't instinct. It wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. He used a dog trained for precision, one I personally helped shape, and turned that discipline into a weapon. He did what he couldn't do when he failed out. And Hadley played right into it. Carrara nodded, her fingers hovering over her phone, but not typing yet. The setup makes sense. A manufactured alert, a forced reaction, justified through policy. They've done this before. This wasn't improvisation, Marcus said. It was a pattern. Her tone dropped. You ready to go public? Yes, Marcus said, but not all at once. I want them to lie first. Let's see how they respond when they still believe they control the story. Carrara nodded slowly. I'll start with the footage, just the alert video, frame by frame. No accusations, no quotes, just analysis, no names. Not yet. Perfect, Marcus said. Let them talk themselves into the corner. The article went live 48 hours later. It didn't just trend, it ignited. Major outlets picked it up within hours. Online forums and social media tore the still frames apart. Mercer's tug on the leash, the dog's confused stance, the moment before the strike. What had once looked like procedure now looked staged, calculated, mechanical. And by sundown, the question wasn't if something had gone wrong. It was how many times before. A side-by-side comparison began circulating online, real alerts versus staged ones. It wasn't long before veteran handlers started weighing in, some anonymously, others just cryptically, confirming what Marcus already knew deep down. This wasn't detection. It was performance. The department issued a generic statement the next morning, calling the event under review and labeling it regrettable but within protocol. Mercer was reassigned to desk duty. Hadley stayed on the street. The mayor refused to comment. The machine had begun its slow spin, but Marcus had already moved. No interviews, no videos, no headlines. Instead, he picked up a notebook and began writing names. He reached out to 4 former colleagues, handlers he trusted, people who had been there with him back in the early days. One was now working in Denver, another in Atlanta, one just over the border in Arkansas. All of them had received dogs through the same federal retirement pipeline, and all of them had seen the same troubling signs: false positives, aggression in calm settings, commands given without any triggering cues. The records pointed back to Marcus's city, and every one of those dogs had Mercer's name on the transfer paperwork. He's retraining them, one of the handlers said during a call. Taking well-balanced dogs and turning them into triggers. Someone either doesn't care or they're co-signing it. Marcus compiled statements, logged timelines, cross-checked arrest records against field reports. Patterns began to form. Same handler, same tactics, same outcome. Cases that began with questionable alerts and collapsed days later. This wasn't a one-time failure. This was design. By the end of the week, Marcus had a folder an inch thick and a hard drive full of footage, transcripts, and sworn statements, enough to build a civil rights case before the department could publish its next round of PR spin. The public storm hadn't hit yet, but the air had changed, and Marcus was already standing in the eye. That night, after the cafe emptied and the summer rain softened into a steady hiss against the pavement, Marcus sat alone at his kitchen table. An old military folder lay open in front of him. JJ had gone for the night, promising to track the recertification trail at first light. Carrara had left too, but not before handing off a drive of archived field footage, clips she thought could strengthen his case. He hadn't opened it yet. Instead, he stared at the folder, at the names, the codes, the dates, but his mind had drifted elsewhere, not to pain, not to anger, back to Iraq. Not the firefights, not the dust storms, the stillness, the silence that hummed just before every mission, a silence full of fear, of sweat, of sand packed so deep into your uniform that it stayed with you for days. He remembered the electric buzz of the generators, the smell of burning plastic, the weight of the heat even in shade, and he remembered her. Carrara Vasquez, just 26 back then, too young to carry that kind of gravity, but somehow already built for it. She walked into his command tent like she belonged there, body armor too big, Nikon camera slung across her shoulder, press badge clipped to her flak vest like it could stop a bullet or at least deflect suspicion. "Where's your unit leader?" she asked from the entrance. Her voice was flat, not rude, but not deferential either, just focused, tired. "You're looking at him," Marcus had said, barely glancing up from the report he wasn't really reading. "I was told I'd be embedded with your team until next week," she said, stepping in, assuming someone's going to explain the rules before we roll out. He studied her, not the gear, but the way she carried it, her stance, the fingers lightly resting on the strap, the eyes that didn't flinch, even when a crack of gunfire echoed faintly beyond the wall. "You want to walk with the unit?" he asked. "I don't want to sit in a Humvee while the story passes me by," she replied. "That story might include getting shot at." "Then it's an honest one," she said. That was the beginning. Over the next few days, she moved with them, on foot, in convoys, in heat that broke grown men. She didn't interrupt, didn't make speeches, but she noticed things others missed, asked the kind of questions that made veterans pause, and she recorded it all, not for drama, for truth. When another reporter tried to stage a shot of children in a crumbled courtyard, Carrara didn't hesitate. She snapped, loudly, loud enough for the captain to look up. Then she deleted the shot herself, without permission, without apology. That was who she was. At night, between operations, she'd sit outside the barracks with Marcus, both of them sipping bitter instant coffee out of cheap plastic mugs, listening to the silence that hovered just beyond the wire. It was on one of those nights, after a chaotic patrol where a local informant had been detained by mistake, that she turned to him and asked the question he'd never forgotten. "Do you ever get used to being right about danger before anyone else sees it?" He'd waited before answering. "No," he said, "but you learn when to speak and when to wait, and you wait until it matters." Now in his kitchen, that memory surfaced like a flare, and just like that, the past receded and the present sharpened. He reached for his phone. It rang twice. "I was just about to call you," Carrara said, her voice steady, familiar, exhausted in the way that didn't dull focus. "You remember Najaf?" Marcus asked. Pause. "The dust storm?" "No, the night after the informant mess. I remember what you said then." "I remember too," she said, quieter now. "That was the first time I trusted a soldier more than the people paying me to tell the story." He didn't answer for a beat. "I never forgot what you said, about waiting until it matters." "It matters now," Marcus said. "Yes," she replied, "it does." They sat like that, on either end of a phone line. Her in an apartment littered with hard drives and war notes. Him in a kitchen that still smelled faintly of gauze and iodine. It didn't feel like distance. It felt like movement, like staging, like something was about to begin. They weren't kids anymore. They weren't idealists. But something old, something buried, had stirred, and neither of them planned on backing down. Later that night, when the neighborhood should have been asleep, a strange stillness hung in the air. Not peaceful, manufactured. There were no sirens, no radios from porches, not even the buzz of insects. Too quiet, too clean. Marcus moved through the alley behind his house, not with fear, but with intention. His limp had mostly faded, but he still carried the cane. Not because he needed it, but because it made people underestimate him. He didn't trust nights like this. Not after a week of the same SUV parked too long outside. Not after a drone buzzed too close to his window. Just once, but long enough. These weren't amateurs, and they weren't just watching anymore. By the time he reached the lot behind the old warehouse, he already knew. He wasn't alone. He could feel it in the way the air pressed down, in the way his own footsteps seemed to disappear too quickly, in the faint scrape of gravel that didn't come from him. He didn't look back, didn't flinch. because that would have confirmed awareness. And fear was what they wanted most. He could hear voices now, muffled, clipped, not words, just tone, controlled, measured, the kind used by men who thought they were still in charge. One of them walked with a soldier's overcompensation, left foot dragging a beat behind, Mercer. The other moved with arrogance instead of discipline, Hadley. They weren't hiding, they were circling. When Marcus stepped between the rusted fencing and the edge of the dock, he heard it. Leash clasps clicking open. Then a sharp command in low, polished German. Not barking. Pursuit. 2 dogs. Big. High drive. Trained to strike first. No hesitation. No scent testing. No handler glances for confirmation. This wasn't search and hold. This was damage on command. Marcus didn't stop. Didn't change speed. He adjusted his angle, moving toward the warehouse entrance he'd scouted days earlier. He already knew about the reinforced gate mechanism, the backup chain lock, the steel shutters. The city had abandoned the site years ago, but not everything inside had fallen apart, and tonight it was going to serve a purpose. The dogs closed in fast. He could hear the syncopated rhythm of their paws on asphalt, fast, deadly, locked in. No barking. Just the sound of force building behind him like a wave. He kept his breath steady. Pain stabbed through his leg, but he didn't shift, didn't stumble. He used forward motion to glide past the pressure, refusing to break stride. At the door, he didn't hesitate. He pushed it open, let it slam half shut behind him, not locked, but loud enough to bait them in. Inside, the warehouse was dark, wide, and quiet as a tomb. The air hung thick with mildew and rusted machinery grease. Echoes moved differently here. Steps stretched longer, sound bent. Exactly the kind of space Marcus had hoped for, because now he held the leash. The warehouse still held echoes of its former life. Broken crates littered the floor, rusted shelves lined the walls like skeletal remains of what once functioned here. Marcus moved quickly, but with control, guiding himself deeper toward the forklift enclosure, a fenced square once meant for tools, now his trap. The gate still worked. He'd tested it days ago. The control box, though rusted, still hummed when touched. All he needed was timing. Behind him, a growl rolled through the air. Not aggression, recognition. They had his scent now. He could hear them coming, claws scraping concrete, faster, heavier. He didn't run. He pivoted around a stack of pallets, stepped into the enclosure, and gave one sharp whistle, just enough to draw them in. The first dog entered like a missile, huge, powerful, focused, scarred ears, rigid tail, eyes locked. The second followed right behind, smaller but surgical in its movement. Marcus sidestepped, kept just beyond their range, and threw the lever. The gate slammed shut with a metallic crash that echoed across the chamber like a dropped engine block. The dog spun, lunging at the fencing, teeth bared, testing the steel with muscle built to break. But it held. They weren't leashed. They weren't waiting for commands. They were contained. Marcus backed up, breath measured, body steady. He held their gaze with the same calm presence he once used in training. The hand that teaches, not deceives. These dogs weren't monsters. They were misused. Then the entrance blew open. Boots pounded against concrete. Hadley's voice carried through the dark, raw and furious, echoing like a bad promise. "You think this makes you a hero?" Marcus didn't answer. Hadley wasn't performing anymore. This was personal now. Rage had replaced protocol. His mask was off. Mercer's steps followed, measured, cold, composed, a different kind of danger, one that calculated. Hadley burst in first. No strategy, just fury. He came fast, reckless. His first punch swung wide, aiming for Marcus's throat. Marcus pivoted inside the arc and drove his elbow up into Hadley's jaw. The crack was clean. Hadley staggered, blood blooming along his chin, but didn't drop. He rushed again, this time lower, shoulder into Marcus's ribs. The impact slammed them both across the floor. Marcus struck a steel beam, pain flashing white. No time to breathe. Hadley was on him again. Wild punches, missed swings, fists that didn't care where they landed. Marcus blocked high, absorbed a blow to the collarbone, felt it shift under pressure. He turned pain into motion. Grabbing Hadley's collar, he yanked forward and drove a knee into his stomach. The air punched out of Hadley's lungs. Marcus spun, stomped the side of his thigh. Hard. The leg gave out. Hadley collapsed to a knee, reaching under his jacket. Weapon. Marcus launched forward just as the gun cleared the holster. It skidded across the floor. Hadley dove. Marcus grabbed his ankle, dragged him back, and slammed a fist into the side of his neck. Hard, decisive. Hadley dropped limp. But the second entrance creaked behind him. Mercer stepped in, not with anger, but precision. No wasted movement, no posturing, just analysis. Marcus didn't rise fully. He used the crouch as leverage, sprang upward, throwing a looping right. Mercer caught the arm, twisted, stepped behind. Classic takedown. But Marcus spun with him, broke the lock before it set. They collided, knees, elbows, torsos, grinding for control. Mercer shifted low, struck Marcus's injured leg with a driving knee. A flash of fire bloomed down his side. Marcus grunted, then drove his forehead into Mercer's nose. A crack. Blood. But Mercer didn't flinch. He answered with 3 rapid strikes to Marcus's ribs, forcing him back toward the shelving racks near the cage. Marcus dropped low, grabbed a rusted metal pipe, swung wide, missed the head, caught Mercer's shoulder. The sound rang out like a struck bell. Mercer stumbled, but only for a breath. He charged, tackled Marcus, slammed him into the support pillar. They went down hard. Marcus rolled first, tried to break contact. But Mercer seized his foot, dropped a knee into Marcus's ribs, blinding pain. Marcus twisted, grabbed Mercer's vest, yanked him down, and drove his elbow into Mercer's temple. Once, twice, Marcus fought until Mercer's grip weakened. Bloodied, exhausted, both men barely stood. Then Hadley staggered up, dragging a broken metal pipe, ready to end it. Marcus moved fast. He deflected the swing, drove him back into the dog pen fencing, and disarmed him with precise force. An elbow to the throat dropped Hadley. But Mercer came next. Quiet, deadly, deliberate. The fight that followed wasn't rage, it was calculation. Every strike had history behind it. Marcus took damage, but responded with control. A chain, a headbutt, a takedown, not to punish, but to end it. When it was over, he restrained both men, and then he turned to the dogs, the ones they'd used as weapons. He approached slowly, using the language they hadn't heard in years. Calm words, open hands, no fear. Recognition flickered. Not obedience, memory. They came to him, not because he commanded, but because they remembered trust. He recorded everything. The ruined warehouse, the restrained officers, and the dogs, once trained to harm, now standing quietly beside him. It wasn't a speech, it was evidence. Authorities arrived soon after. The trial began, but the story had already gone public. And when it did, it shook the system. Carrara's article exposed the hidden network. Dogs retired from service, rerouted to secret training sites, reshaped into tools of fear. Mercer wasn't just a bad actor, he was part of something bigger. Courtroom testimony confirmed it. Records were forged, reports falsified. Marcus's own training notes stolen and twisted. Hadley lost control on the stand. Mercer stayed silent, but couldn't deny the proof. They were sentenced, 37 years for Mercer, 32 for Hadley. But Marcus knew this wasn't just about prison. It was about change. And change began. Dogs were rescued. Training centers were investigated. A task force was formed. Marcus was offered a leadership role to rewrite the system from the ground up. He didn't take the job for recognition. He took it to make sure no more dogs were broken, like Django, Bravo, or rocket. The new facility didn't look like a base. It looked like healing. Wide fields, soft voices, slow training built on trust, not control. Handlers returned to retrain. Dogs learned to listen, not obey. At a public event months later, Django sat calmly as a child approached him. No fear, no tension, just peace. Marcus stood nearby, not as a soldier, not as a survivor, but as a man who knew the work had only just begun. When asked if what he built was enough, he didn't say yes. He said, "It's not about enough. It's about different." And in that quiet, in the space between what was and what could be, something new began.